It's very important to have the basic necessities to survive. What I mean by that is food and water. Of course, toilet paper, because God knows you can't have toilet paper without shit literally running, right? But to accrue the amount of resources necessary to survive for a even short period of time can seem daunting to some people. And of course, there's many options out there where you can buy a 5 gallon bucket or whatever of freeze dried food and other such things that are supposed to be there for you if absolutely needed, right? Here's the thing, you don't have to go that route. In fact, in my opinion, whatever that's worth, I actually would recommend against that. I.e., the 5 gallon bucket that you don't touch for 10 years or whatever. I think that you can save more money and accrue just as an effective food supply by going to your local store, big box store in most of our cases, and buying just a little bit here and there. Not even much. Like, say your grocery bill per week is $120, and you buy an extra 100, or excuse me, not an extra 130, an extra $10 of food, and you leave that where it is. Okay? You leave that there, and you don't touch that shit at all. The next time you go out and buy food again, you spend that extra money, and you leave that separately, and you don't touch that shit. And you just keep doing that. Small, incremental, but consistent gains over time. Okay? It's the same way as investing. Investing works very similarly. You invest a small incremental amount. Sorry, I can't English. Over time. And you let that build. That is the basis of wealth building. Wealth is not just financial assets. Wealth is resources in general. And what I'm saying is, if you want, excuse me, you want to build that resource wealth over time, enough at least for a month. You don't have to spend all of that all at once. You can if you want. If you have the money, by all means, do so. A month's worth of food in your pantry or in a storage tote when you need it is far better than no storage at all when you do. But you don't have to start that way. You can build it up over time in a way that is financially viable for yourself. And that's what I did. Just a couple cans of corn, green bean, and this is just my personal grocery list, but corns, green bean, and peas over time. And then after you've built your stockpile, you use it. And what I say by that is you're cycling through it, because what cycling through allows you to do is know what you like. Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, in an emergency, I don't care. Yep, well, that is kind of true. But there's also certain things that, even if you have to eat them, there's like, I fucking hate life. And there is a bit of beggars can't be choosers under this, but why set yourself up for an easier failure by, and I apologize for my cat in the background who's freaking the fuck out right now. Jasmine! Sorry about that. Why set yourself up for failure in the future with food that you're not really going to like and that you're going to tolerate in the best scenario, and in the worst, you're just going to be like, you know what, fuck this. Set yourself up for success. Find out what you like, what you are able to stock with your budget that you could eat normally. And yeah, it's not going to be the best. It's not going to be gourmet necessarily. But that's not the point. Like, I know I'm kind of like fluctuating between that first point of food to survive and food that you like. Find that mid ground where it's like, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this, but I mean, compared to eating dirt, it's pretty good. For me, my mid ground I've found to be canned chicken, green beans, peas, corn, and rice and beans. I've actually switched over to navy beans just because I think that they're easier to cook than pinto beans. But that's just me. Do what you want. But the point is, you set aside a certain amount of your budget when you go buy groceries to build up that stockpile. That way, if you need it, you have it. And your goal should at the very least be a month's worth of food. Now, a month's worth of food actually isn't that hard to stockpile. A month's worth of water, however, that requires some planning because you need to figure out space to have gallons of water. That is something I'm working on right now myself. Water is a bitch to try to store, in my opinion. Others have probably found better success, but having that on hand can alleviate so much stress in your life. So I'm not even talking like end of the world scenario. I'm not even talking even a hurricane or a tornado. So you lose your job, right? You lose your job tomorrow. Maybe you have to skimp on an electric bill, a water bill, or whatever in the interim until you have secured viable income. Or not even you lost your job, but shit, dude, you're out of work because of an illness. In America, that's not very uncommon, even with insurance, right? Have the resources you need to survive at least for a month. If you can do longer, by all means, do longer. But at the very least, a month. That'll cover you in 90%, somewhere around there, percent of circumstances that you would find yourself in that situation. And not just for yourself, but for your children, your wife, significant other, whatever you want. Hell, fucking your entire family if you are able to do it. But you don't have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. Basics are available. And hell, I would argue that basics, even with factoring in energy sources such as heating elements, such as canned heat or whatever, to boil water if you need to, are going to be cheaper in the long run than buying the pre-made shit. Which, again, I'm not going to tell you not to buy the pre-made shit. Buy what you want. Buy what is the best for you with your budget and your situation. But if you don't have that kind of money, start small. I have found that in my experience, the stockpiles I build up for myself every year, because I cycle through my stuff every year, because for me, it works better for my budget to cycle through the stuff I have to set up myself for the next year. And that's kind of how I'm thinking at this point. And eventually I would like to get to a point where I'm thinking more of 2 years ahead, and on and on and on. But for me, I can ensure that what I'm stockpiling now, is going to survive for at least a year. At least shelf life. I'm not talking like usability, but shelf life will survive for at least a year. Therefore, I'm going to be using it every year. All right? I'm going to be testing the food that I'm using to ensure that not only is it something that I can moderately, palate, but also that it is enough for me to, and my family, to survive off of, in a kind of like a 2,000 calorie per day kind of diet, right? If I could get to the point where I could just donate the shit that I have to charity, I absolutely would. I think that is the ultimate goal, is not just surviving myself, but allowing my community to survive, because we're not an island. We can only survive for so long. We need each other. But that gets into a whole other thing. But at least for yourself, while you're building, start small and then work your way up. Now, again, if you're able to start and buy the 5-gallon fucking buckets of it'll survive for 20 years without refrigeration kind of shit, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to buy it. However, I do think it would be cheaper and more effective to buy it at your local market with things that are relatively easy to get a hold of. Like I said, for me, it's rice, chicken, green beans, peas, corn, and beans. And I have found that my stockpile has lasted, what I try to accrue for a month, lasts me for about 2 months, if not longer, when I go to cycle through it. But your mileage may vary. Do what works for you. This is just not necessarily a suggestion, but a different perspective. That's all I got.